So this week, then, we are talking about those dodgy teachers going on strike. How dare they ask for more money? It's outrageous. Let's get into it. So this week, then, we've decided to change things up a little. We would normally talk about behaviour, but I thought it'd be important to talk really about the strikes that are going on this week and why it's important that we support them, or don't support them for some people. But I think it's just important to really mention a few facts, because ultimately a lot of this is being pushed around just pay for teachers, and to some extent that's true. But it's what the government will kind of have you believe in terms of it's just teachers being greedy and asking for more money. That's not the case. Okay. I think what we need to do is look at the actual facts. And some of these things, I'm saying, we teach students all the time about fake news and going able to research and look at things themselves and not take things for just face value when they're presented with something. So what I like to do is just think about asking questions and talking to people. The main people you want to speak to is children. Children are the biggest evidence in terms of what's going on in schools at the moment. We've got a number of issues. It's all around funding for schools. Yes, the government continues to keep saying they're giving more money to schools, but that's because the actual schools are increasing in size in terms of numbers of students. So, of course, there's going to be more money needed for those students because they have or come with a certain value attached to them in terms of what money is needed to teach those students. So, yes, there's more going into schools, but it doesn't mean there's actually more to give around to help with other issues in terms of whether it being resources or staffing and et cetera, and particularly with the cost increasing at the moment for things like electricity and stuff. Some schools are having to think about, how long they're keeping the heating on during these cold spells that we're having at the moment. So lots of issues. But really the key thing I really want to point out to any parents listening, and this is the most important part about these strikes, okay, whatever you believe, whatever you think in terms of teachers and the rights, and, people can talk about there's no money at the moment. I get it. Not the right time to go on strike. But the big issue really is around the fact that we fundamentally have a problem at the moment in UK schools, that there are not enough staff to go for all the jobs that are going around. If you look at any of the adverts out there for schools at the moment, you go onto their websites, look at vacancies, they are full of positions that are not being filled. That means your child or your future child is having people come in who are supply teachers or maybe even unqualified people. I know my son personally, within the last year, his school had an unqualified person for a period of time, who's in a primary school, taking basically his classes. They're not necessarily fully qualified to be able to take those lessons or have enough experience. And there's no criticism of them. It's just not the standard that we'd expect. And I'm seeing that at the moment for my son. And I'm worrying that, in the next 5 to 6 years when he's going to be sitting his GCSEs, what is the state going to be then in terms of those core subjects of maths, English, science, which are the hard subjects to cover at the moment? There's lots of schools that have got nearly a quarter of their staff they're struggling to kind of replace in terms of those core subjects for maths, English, and science. And so what I worry about is that the government's pushing this idea that the teachers are greedy and they're just asking for more money because they want the public to turn against them. We've seen this throughout the pandemic. We've seen this during the whole time that where the schools were shut down. There was this push of, it's teachers this, it's teachers that. There's always this negative thing. But if you actually think about it, most people, when they think about what teachers do for their children, would actually turn around and say, well, actually, these are really good people. They care about, my child. I know personally I have that philosophy of, if a child comes into my school, I treat them like they're my own son, because I want, when he goes to school, I want him to be treated by a teacher as if he was their own son. That's the reason why they call it loco parentis. It's like the idea that we are a parent when, the parent's not there. And so for me, it's frustrating that we get all this criticism all the time in terms of, being this, being that, being the other. And yet one of the big fundamental issues is teachers go above and beyond. We actually talk about, people will criticize them saying, you get all these holidays per year. Yeah, we get a lot of holidays, but it is for a specific reason. We need that time to kind of switch off to get, recharge our batteries, because during term time, it's non-stop. And if I actually looked at my wage slip and how many hours I'm supposed to work per week, because we don't get overtime, if I actually did my hours, I'd be done by Wednesday afternoon, because in actual fact, I'm working a 60-hour week. Don't get me wrong, I love my job. I don't want to change my job. I just want the conditions to be better to allow me to serve the children better and to basically do a better job for them. That's the reason why we're frustrated. That's the reason why it has come to a point after the last 10 years of cut after cut after cut, being asked to do more and more for less and less. There comes a point we have to say no. It's simple things like we'll go out and buy things like little printers for, rewards and stamps and stuff, or little wallets and things to put pens in for students, or, fancy colouring pens to mark work or to give feedback. And we pay for all this stuff out of our own money. We'll buy packets of pens to give to students, and we never ask for anything in return. We don't turn around and say, well, no, we were demanding this and this. This is why we've come to this point now, because we're constantly putting our hands into our own pockets to support the children getting what they deserve. And you've only got to look at the other issues we've got around funding, whether it's a child with mental health issues. We know there's big issues with mental health following the pandemic, and yet it's a 2-year waiting list for students to get help and support, while some of them are, self-harming or potentially, threatening to commit suicide, and it takes 2 years. That's not acceptable. We need that money to support and help those children. So I'm asking people who are listening to this video right now to say, actually, enough is enough. Support teachers in this. It is not about us earning more money. I'm not interested in more money. I want better quality of life so that I can actually, go into school fresh with a clear head in terms of having, switched off for a reasonable amount of time in the evening, so I can come back in the next day and give every child that 100% that they deserve, rather than coming in and just being absolutely exhausted because I've stayed up to 11 o'clock at night, still doing the work. And the reason we don't say no, and that's the problem, we don't say no, because ultimately we care more about these children than the government does. We don't stop. People talk about, oh, you've got all these holidays. Yeah, but in the holidays, I know certainly in the last holiday, not the Christmas one, I totally switched off over Christmas, but in the October half term, I actually went into school for at least a day, and I worked at home for another day, unpaid. I don't get paid for that. I don't want to be paid for that to some extent. I'm not asking for more money for that. What we're really asking more money for is funding for schools. That's one thing. And proper pay for teachers starting the profession, and, a little bit of an increase for other staff as well, because ultimately there is this, cost of living crisis. But the reality is all the other stuff needs fixing. If you're someone who's coming out of university and you're, highly qualified as a mathematician, and you're looking at a teacher's job and going, oh, look at how much I'm going to get paid for that, or I can go and get, 20, 30 thousand pounds more doing something else. We're not going to attract people into that job. We're not getting the professionals that we need with those high qualifications to make sure they're passing on that experience and knowledge to young children. And that's the issue, because the job is just not competitive. We've got teachers leaving to go and work in supermarkets as managers because they can earn more money. It's bonkers, because ultimately, if you're sending your child to school, you want them to be supported and given the best possible education. You wouldn't want to be. It's the same thing with the NHS. Completely support the NHS. Do you want to be sending do you want to go to a doctor who's basically paid like hardly any money and thinking, well, what am I going to get? Are they going to really bother to pay attention to what my issues are? Or would you rather have them being paid a decent wage so then you're going to get the quality of service? And the problem is this: by the time people realise the issue is out of control, it will be too late. It takes on average around 4 years to train a teacher, whether it's 3 years to get a degree and then they go and do a PGC on top, or if they do a BEd like I did, and you come out after 4 years and go into education. So even if we solve this problem with the recruitment and we start tomorrow, we will not see the impact for 4 years. The problem is, year on year, the government has failed to hit its recruitment targets. They're failing again for this year. So that means there is still a year-on-year shortage again this year. And the reality is, talk to your children. Ask them, how many times have you had a supply teacher this year? How many times have you not had a regular teacher for this subject, that subject, and the other? Check with them. Check the facts with them. I'm not lying. Talk to them, because they will give you an honest answer. You won't get one from other people because they don't want to tell you the truth. The truth is, we are at a crisis point. We need to do something. We need to act on this, and we need to get proper funding for schools so we can attract decent, well-qualified teachers into these schools to provide a future education for our next generation. But the reality is, as the clock ticks on, it is getting later and later, and we have put up with this for too long, far too long. The government is failing to act. Like I said, it will take 4 years as a minimum to solve this. Realistically, we're looking at 6 to 8 years. If you've got a child who's approaching their GCSEs between now and then, good luck to them. They're not going to get the teachers. There is a proper crisis that is going on at the moment, and it is not being addressed. So we need to do something. You need to support this. Please do not let the government turn around and let people start criticising teachers, turning against them. They will do that. They will literally say, oh, it's us again. We're causing the problem. And I get it. Ultimately, there is a sense of irony, isn't it, that, we're striking, so we're closing the school so children can't go in and get an education. But for me, it's that value of one day, or as a couple of days, of closing the school down to make a point is far better than the child going a whole year without a teacher, because that's the reality of it. If you have a child who is going into school right now, ask them that question, comment on the video, share it, pass it on to other people. We need to get this around. We need to show that solidarity and support for teachers. But it's not just about teachers. It's about your child and your child's education. Ultimately, if you don't support it, you're putting your child's education at risk. And I can't understand that. Ultimately, they get one chance. Don't get me wrong, in 10, 15 years, I'll probably still be doing the teaching thing. I'll still be whatever situation it's in because I want to make a difference. I want to provide that change. But your child gets one opportunity when they go to school. They don't get that chance again. If we don't act now, the repercussions will go on for years to come. And so it's important that we get the support. It's important that people speak up and say, this is not acceptable. We need change. We need proper, fully funded schools. We need that support there, for all of the different staff. And like I said, it's not just about money necessarily for me. It's about saying, actually, can we have more staff to provide better support? Classroom sizes are bigger than they've ever been before. And if you think during lockdown, how many of you were supporting your child's education if you only had one child, maybe two, and how difficult it was just to do the teaching alongside your normal job. Imagine having 32, 34 in a class of various different abilities. And that's the reason why we need to reduce those class sizes, get more funding into schools so that the children get what they deserve, get that support. They've already had 2 years out of school. There's so much catch up to do. That's not being fully funded. There's still issues around that, and the government is expecting us to do more and more and more, saying we need to catch up. We need to provide them with these extra curricular, activities and extra time after school and catch-up sessions. Where's that all coming from? It's coming from teachers giving up their time and giving up time after school. And again, we don't get paid overtime. If we stay till 5, 6 o'clock in the evening and then go home and work in the evening, we don't claim that back. And not necessarily asking to. We just want to actually have a decent life as well, so that we can say, yes, I want to go out in an evening and visit some friends, rather than sitting there saying, no, I've got to sit and plan some lessons tomorrow. I've got to make sure I've done all that marking, because we don't have time. So that's all we're asking for. We need your support to support your children. It's such a big issue right now, and if there's no change, then the children will suffer. So like I say, slightly different one this week, but I feel really passionate about it. I feel like there's issues that aren't being addressed. Please like, share, subscribe, pass it on to other people, and together, hopefully, we can make a difference. Thanks for listening.